Hello, my name is Lucas Pinera. Today I will be talking about academic paywalls. That was the topic that I chose for my research paper, and this is for CGS3095 for the fall 2022 semester. So, as an introduction, academic research is usually published through an academic journal, and this way we know that it comes from a reliable source and we know that it's been peer reviewed by other experts in the field. And this has been the norm since the 1800s, really. So the problem that I want to talk about is that the subscription prices to have access to these academic journals have gotten to a point where top institutions are struggling to pay to continue to have access. Most academic journals are not free, and one will have to pay a subscription for each database. So this racks up very fast. And having a paywalled model has been shown to have a negative effect on science since it slows down the collaboration process. So the academic publishing industry is a very profitable industry. They have low operation costs, so it's a low margin. They charge very, very expensive subscription rates yearly to have access and to maintain access to the databases. Companies, Elsevier, which is one of the biggest academic publishing companies that own over 3,000 academic journals, they, in 2018, made a profit of $3.2 billion. That's more than Netflix saw in revenue that year. So there's definitely a lot of money to be made in this industry, but it's just too expensive for institutions to continue paying. The University of California, after 5 months of negotiations, ended their subscription with Elsevier. They did this because it was just too expensive. And this is coming from a university that output 10% of all American research. They're one of the leading universities in research publication. And it's not just American universities. It's also plenty of European universities and European institutions, also in Asia and Africa. Taiwan recently was given an extension to their subscription to Elsevier because they couldn't come up with the funds. And this is just not a viable option for them. Germany has grown very frustrated with how high the subscription prices are. So this problem is being felt all over the world. A lot of developing nations simply they can't afford it. So why the paywalls and why is it so expensive? Well, what most people think and what I thought before researching this issue is that, okay, well, research costs a lot of money. And so that's why they have to charge high subscription rates. But they actually don't really fund research. Usually it's the institutions themselves, like the universities themselves, or taxpayer dollars. The United States spends $140 billion a year in taxpayer money to fund research. And then a lot of this research is published behind a paywall. So the taxpayers don't have access to this. They would have to pay really high rates. And a good example of how expensive it can be is that um, one of the top scientific journals, known as just Science, uh, it could be upwards of $30 per article to just read the article. So if you want to go through a couple sources, it could easily get up into the hundreds and thousands of dollars. Um, so they're not paying for the research, but they're also not paying the authors. It turns out that authors usually have to pay a fee to be published and usually have to give up the copyright to their work to these companies. And on top of that, the peer reviewers who make sure that the information is accurate and reliable, they also go unpaid. So they're not paying for the funding, they're not paying authors, and they're not paying peer reviewers. That's why their margin of operation or cost of operation is so low. So it's a lot of institutions are starting to question, why are they paying so much money for these databases, and are trying to find alternatives and solutions. So this problem has a global reach. It's not just, as I pointed out, it's not just American universities. It's also plenty of nations in Europe. Also, a lot of African nations are affected by this. There's initiatives in Kenya to also work on finding another way to access and publish academic information and research. And not having access to the latest research can have serious global effects. A good example of this was that in 2014, there was an outbreak of Ebola in Sierra Leone and Liberia. And there was research published. The latest research was published, but it was published behind a paywall. And the local officials and health institutions, they could not pay for the subscription. So they didn't have access to that latest research, and they were the ones in most need of that information. And we saw how much collaboration we need in science, as we saw with the COVID-19 outbreak. So this is a very important issue. So an alternative that's growing very popular is the open access or open science movement. And this movement believes that academic journals should be free and open to the public. And this is starting to look like a more attractive option for universities, because they will be able to make the information free. They can maintain the copyright. The authors can maintain the copyright and still have it be published. And this way, through open access, the open access movement, information can be shared globally. The University of California has adopted an open access model. Germany is definitely looking into this model of publishing research, and we've seen Kenya as well. Some authors don't want to publish through open access because they still want the prestige of their work being published in one of these paywalled journals, because if it's published somewhere else, they may feel like it might be seen as less important or less work. But prestige is something that's gained over time, and reputability is gained over time. So with time and top universities and institutions like the University of California and those in Germany, I wanted to bring this issue up because it definitely has global implications. I believe that their business model is simply unethical and predatory. And hopefully, open access and free information can be the future of academic research. This has been my presentation. Thank you very much. Here are my references.